Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. We'll begin today's session on journal metrics and quartiles. So we'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands within our footprint areas, the Awabakal, Darkinjung, Biripi, Worimi, Wonnarua and Eora nations. We also pay respect to the wisdom of the elders past and present. We would also like to extend this acknowledgement and pay our respects to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today. So just a reminder that today's session will be recorded and it will be sent out to you once we have finished the recording. We'll have time for questions at the end of the session, but feel free to pop any questions that you do have in the chat in Zoom and we can get to them. So today's session is the last webinar on academic promotions that have been organised and presented by Debbie Booth, our Research and Scholarly Communications Advisor, and by the Research Liaison Librarians that you can see on the screen there. So today's session is presented by myself. My name is Jessica Birchall and Nicole Fall-Brown. So the Research Liaison Librarian role provides assistance to staff and HDR students for any research related needs. So as you can see here, we have we're 4 Research Liaison Librarians and we provide support to different schools. So if you wish to get in contact with us, please feel free to email the Research Liaison Librarian appropriate to your school to discuss any help or set up an appointment. Our contact details are available on the library website. So today's session we'll be looking at journal metrics and we'll provide an overview of the most common journal metric schemes and we'll demonstrate how to locate those metrics. So the specific journal metrics we'll be looking at today will include quartiles. So you might have heard of a top quartile journal or a Q1 journal. So we'll look at what that means and how this is calculated. Journal impact factor, also known as the JIF, J-I-F. It's a ranking scheme of journals indexed in Web of Science provided by Clarivate. We'll look at the Scimago journal rank, so an SJR. It's a ranking scheme of journals indexed in Scopus. So these metrics can be used when you're beginning your research, when you're determining what journals you should publish in to give your research the most impact. You can also use journal metrics when applying for academic promotions. It's important to not include these journal metrics just on their own, as they only reflect the quality of the journal and not the research published within. So when applying to the NHMRC for funding, hiring or promotion, they actually request that applicants don't use journal metrics or ERA journal rankings in their application, for the reason that I've just mentioned above, that the metrics only rank and assess the journal and not the quality of the articles within the journal. So you can use journal metrics in addition to using the range of the other citation metrics to provide a complete picture and to give context to the impact of your research. So like the citation-based metrics and the alternative metrics that you've learnt about in the previous sessions, journal metrics can be sourced from a range of databases and tools, and there'll be variation and overlap between each source. This is due to the different source publications, the time periods that are indexed, and the subjects that are indexed and included in each database. So this is why whenever you include metrics, it's important to include the details of the source of your metrics. So this explains why your metrics are as they are and how they'll be different in some areas. So you might have seen, if you've been to the other academic promotion session, this slide has been on the previous sessions. So this gives you an example of what candidates are required to provide when they submit for an academic promotion. They need to produce a portfolio that outlines activities and achievements in each of the 3 areas of teaching and learning, research and innovation, and engagement. So you must demonstrate your achievements and the impact of your work through appropriate evidence since your last promotion or your last appointment. So in these sections of your academic promotion submission, you would include publication metrics. So this could also include statements relating to the journal metrics for your publications. So next up, we're talking about quartiles.
Okay, so quartiles we're going to discuss at the start here because you're going to see, and we'll talk about quartiles as we demonstrate in some of the other databases. Now, this is something you'll see in all of the ones we look at today. So we wanted to explain it through first. So quartiles are determined using a journal's impact, the indexing and the subject categorization within the databases that we'll look at today, Clarivate and Scopus. So each category, as they are assigned a category, they are then divided into quartiles based on the impact factor or the SJR. So quartile 1 will be the top 25% of journals within that area, and they will have the highest impact factors. Quartile 2 will be the next 25%, Q3, the 25 after that, and then Q4s. But we also wanted to note that the journals that align with some, you'll see that when we demonstrate them, they often journals can sit within multiple categories within the databases. So a journal that sits within one subject category is often going to rank higher than those that are actually aligned to multiple categories as well. And you'll see that as you look through some of the journals.
Okay, so first up we'll be looking at a journal impact factor. So a journal impact factor is a figure that can be found in the Journal Citation Reports database. So this is a term that is licensed and owned by Clarivate and only features journals that are indexed in Web of Science. So this is why it's important whenever you include your metrics to cite where it comes from, because this particular figure only looks at journals within this particular database. So if you sort of get in your head that journal impact factor relates to Clarivate and it will only show products that are indexed within Web of Science. So the journal impact factor formula is calculated by the average number of items. I'll start that again. The GIF formula is calculated by the average number of times an article published within the journal in the last 2 years has been cited in the current JCR year. So the example we have here is that a GIF of 2.5 means that on average the articles published 1 or 2 years ago within the Journal Citation Report have been cited 2.5 times. So obviously the higher your journal impact factor is, the better. So the journal impact factor figure can be found on publisher websites and other promotional materials. So you might see on a journal website, it will say that it has a journal impact factor of this number. But when you're using this figure in your promotions or any type of metrics, it's important that you should get that information from the Journal Citations Report, so the source of truth. So don't take it from the journal site, always take it from the Journal Citation Reports page. It's also important to note that it doesn't indicate the quality of the authors or the articles within the journal. The metric is measured on citable items only. So this includes things like editorials and news items. So just important to think of, it doesn't include sort of everything. It's only those items that they are deemed citable. And it also has a strong bias to STEM subjects, so science, technology, engineering, medicine. Remember that if your research is outside of this, or if you're in humanities and social science, it might not be as high within this particular database. But I think that's sort of been a common theme that's been shown throughout, particularly in traditional metrics, that they sort of favour, you know, science and medicine more than humanities. So another Web of Science journal metric that you might have heard of is the Eigenfactor Score. So it's also a Web of Science tool. So it's calculated using Web of Science index journal and citation data. It measures the number of times articles from the journal published in the past 5 years have been cited in the current JCR year, so in the current journal citation report year. So it kind of gives you a bit of a snapshot of the last 5 years for a journal. So like the impact factor, the Eigenfactor score is essentially a ratio of number of citations to total number of articles. Unlike the impact factor, the Eigenfactor score, it counts citations to journals in both sciences and social sciences. So it doesn't sort of skew one way, it looks at both. It does eliminate self-citation. So every reference from one article in a journal to another article from the same journal is discounted. It also weighs each reference according to the amount of time researchers spend reading the journal. Now, this is something that we were discussing before. I don't know how they determine that, you know, how much time researchers spend reading the journal. Obviously, it must be some sort of data that they can collect via their websites. The Eigenfactor score is also scaled. So the sum of the Eigenfactor scores of all the journals listed in the journal citations report is 100. So the lowest score is 0.01. So think of all the journals that are indexed within Web of Science. It's given, the total of that is 100 and it's given a rating within that. So just generally, I'd recommend using a journal impact factor over the Eigenfactor score. It sort of gives a better understanding of the citation impact of the journal. So I'm just going to give you a quick demonstration of how to find your journal impact factor through the journal citation reports. So the journal citation reports can be located, it's something that the library subscribes to. So you can go to the library site, go to our list of databases, and enter in journal citation reports. Search that one. You can see that database has come up. So we can see here that it's, you know, owned by Clarivate. So you can kind of tell it looks like a Web of Science database. It has Clarivate in the corner. So you can see here you can browse the journals or different categories, different subject areas, or publishers if you like. And also in the search box, you can enter the journal name or an ISSN or a subject. So you can see here when I enter in sort of a subject area, it's going to try and find a journal that matches. So we'll select psychological trauma theory, research, practice and policy. And this will bring up its entry into the journal citation reports. So you can see some sort of basic information, where it's located, how long it's been indexed in Web of Science. If we keep scrolling, we can have a look at the journal's performance, and we can see here the journal impact factor is 9.398. So that means that on average, the articles published within that journal citation report year has been cited at least 9.4 times if you're rounding up. So this is also where you can find out some other information about the journal. Other things relating to the citation rate. We have some information on open access. And this is where you can find, by using the journal impact factor, they've calculated what quartile this journal is in. So for 2021, it's ranked 13 out of 142, and it's in quartile 1. So it's in one of the top journals within this subject area. We can see here that it's, this is for the subject area of psychiatry, and it's also in clinical psychology as well. So for both of those subject areas, it's in the top quartile. If we keep scrolling, this is also where you can find your Eigenfactor score. And all this information at the top of the page, you can download a report that includes all this information. So if you select export, you can export this as a PDF. You'll need to have a Web of Science account to access this feature. So if I just sign in. I just need to select it again. So if we open that up, you can see all that information is in sort of a handy PDF document. It also includes, how they calculated the journal impact factor as well. So that's how to find our journal impact factor in journal citation reports. You can also find the journal impact factor within Web of Science. So if we go back to our A to Z database list and enter Web of Science, bring up that database. So if there's a particular article that's published in a journal, you're interested in publishing in, you can bring up a particular title. Just normally how you would search within Web of Science, you could go by subject areas or enter in a particular journal or a title that you're interested in. You see that's brought up my previous search, psychological trauma as a topic. If I search using that, can find sort of a list of journal articles that are within that subject. Wherever you see the link for the journal, you can click the link for that and it will bring up that journal impact factor information for that particular journal. So not only does it have the impact factor, it also will give you the quartile ranking for that as well. So you can have a look at sort of articles within your subject area and have a look at some of the different journals, see what their impact factor is and what their ranking is and their quartile is. And that is journal impact factor. So next we will look at Scimago, the SJR.
Okay, so the SJR, the Scimago Journal Ranking, you will find this data available in Scopus, and SJR has a website as well. So I'll show you both of these shortly. But the Scimago Journal Rank is a calculation which is kind of similar to the JIF, and it has additional reference to the reputation of a citing journal. So they also assign journals into subject categories, and again, they are then further divided into quartiles that we said at the start. And so the numeric value representing the average number of weighted citations received during a selected year per document published in the journal during the previous years that has been indexed within Scopus. So that's how they've worked out the SJR within there. And they are also weighted according to the Scopus subject fields. And I'll show you shortly. We've got a link on the bottom of the page there to the Scimago Journal Ranking website and Scopus. But we'll see another two when we look in Scopus. So those in Scopus are Cite Score. So Site score is the average citations per document published in the journal within the last 3 years. It includes all documents indexed within Scopus, and it shouldn't be used to compare between subjects, so it's not field normalised. So don't compare between each subject for that site score, just work off the journal that you're looking at. The other one that we'll see within here is the source normalised impact per paper, which is a SNP, and it is the source normalised impact per paper, and it measures the actual citations received, which is relative to citations expected for that serial subject area. It has an average score for all journals within Scopus and is approximately equal to 1. It also takes into account characteristics of sources, disciplines, the frequency that authors cite papers, the speed at which the citation impact will mature, and the extent of the database coverage within that field of literature. We're just going to switch screens. Okay, so again, I'm on the A to Z database list. This time we're going to have a look at Scopus. So from here, we want to look at where we see the journal information within Scopus is here under sources. Now it sits on title. You can also search by subject area, the publisher, or the ISSN if you've got that for your journal. We'll just look at the title today. We're going to look up that same journal, so psychological trauma, and I say find. I just scroll down here, it says underneath. So you can see here we've got on this first page, we've got the site score, the highest percentile, and the citations. If I click on this, we get a little bit more detail about the journal. So we have the publications detail here on the side. And over here, you've got those metrics we're talking about. So you've got your site score, which is 8.5, and within Scopus, you'll always see this little eye, and you can click it, so it tells you a little bit more about what that means. So average citations received per document published within this journal. So that is at 8.5. The other one we're looking at is SJR at 1.963. Again, it's got the little eye to tell us how they've calculated that, and your SNP is here for the same thing. But what we want to do, if we're looking at the quartile, we can scroll down a little bit, and it tells us here how we were talking earlier about things in different subject categories. If I just scroll down a little bit here, we can see that this journal within Scopus is in the category of psychology, but it's indexed within the subcategory of social psychology and clinical psychology. So it is ranked at number 11 of 296 journals within social psychology, but in clinical psychology it's number 16 of 292. And they are both within, first 96th percentile and then the 94th percentile. I'm just going to click across here to site score, rank and trend. So this, we can change the category here. If you were more clinically focused than sociology focused, you can change these. Now, when we said at the start about a quartile, we're thinking, so quartile 1 is the top 25% of journals within this category. So from 100 down. So this is actually ranked at, if it's in the 96th percentile, that does actually indicate that it's a quartile 1 journal because it's in that top 25%. You can see over here on the side the trend, so you can see it's going up over time. Okay, and then if we change it over to say this one, we can see the same. Okay, so there it says it at the top and highlights it for us too. So 16, that's site score of 8.5 and it's in the 94th percentile. So similar to Web of Science, you can export any of the content from here as well. Just clicking the export option on any of the pages. Now the next, so we're going to look at this same journal. So as I said, you can see your SJR ranking here. SJR also has its own website. So just type in SJR into Google for the first one. I'm going to copy that in because it's a long one. So here we can again search title, ISSN or publisher. You can also browse by going through the journal option. Let's paste this in. And this one. So we'll see similar information. We'll just scroll down. We can still see it's here. It's still ranked within those 2 categories. It's a United States publication by the American Psychological Association. We can link out to its homepage and any contact or how to publish information within this guide as well. If I keep scrolling down a little bit past the ads, we will see here the quartiles. So if I hover over this, you can see back in 2010 within clinical psychology, it was a Q2 and social was a Q3. But the greens for the last few years means it's a Q1. So you can hover over that to get that Q1 ranking as well. So the same information just presented a little bit differently. So Scopus had your percentile as in the numbers with a 96th percentile. And this one does say your Q1. You can change any of these graphs in here. We've got this one here. We can change it over to a table if you prefer to see it in a table. But it does go reverse, so we can see 2021, it's ranked Q1. And you've got a few other little statistics or information. You can see find similar. It gives you a bit of, you can do these, got these other little tables about the documents. This is how your trend for the SJR has changed over the years. Your citations, self-sites versus total sites. So you can see that the self-sites are quite low for determining those. And your collaboration. So you can, so it gives you a bit about when we change this SJR one over, it does talk here about how they've determined their ranking. So size independent prestige indicator that ranks journals by their average prestige per article. And then we scroll to see the data that's listed there as well. That is those two. I'll just stop this share so we can go back. So we've also included here how you can use these journal metrics when you're trying to put a narrative together. So you can see, so we've got example 1 here, which is some data that's been gathered by the journal citation reports. So my research on eating disorders in teenagers and young adults has resulted in 6 publications, of which I am the first author. including one in a top-ranked journal in nutrition and dietetics, which is clinical nutrition, and the other in a top-ranked journal in the field of clinical psychology, which is the European Eating Disorders. And you can see how we've added a little reference there to say where they've come from and what that means. So the parts in blue are the parts that we're pulling from the databases we've showed today. The second one is an example from SJR, the Shimago journal rankings that we just looked at. So in 2021 article published in the Psychological Bulletin has been selected 11 times. The journal's in the top quartile, Q1, for the area of general psychology and is ranked 2 of 203 journals according to the Shimago journal rankings. And the last one is something we've pulled from SciVal, which you might remember if you've come to one of the earlier sessions this week. And it is in 2020, 16.7% of my published articles were published in journals that were in top 10% of most cited journals worldwide. 31.8% of the published articles were in the top 10% of ranked journals according to the SciVal performance indicators. So this is another place you can get data from. And lastly, a few points to remember as you're actually collecting metrics for these promotional documents. So citation-based metrics and alternative metrics are sourced from a range of databases and tools, and there's going to be, you will find variation and overlap between the sources, and that is because of the difference in source publications, the time periods they've indexed, and the difference in subject categories. So to tell your and put a good picture of your research impact and tell your story, it's important to have a look at a large range of metrics and tools out there. Tailor that story that you're developing for your audience and the purpose. So in this case, if it's promotion, make sure it is worded in that way. No single metric should be used to indicate the impact of research. So remember to put, look at a few and choose those ones that best tell that story for your purpose. When you're writing your submission, do be clear, organised and consistent, and make sure that message is targeted at that audience. And like in our example prior, make sure you just include those details of where you've sourced all of those metrics. Is there any questions or anything you'd like us to show again?
That link in the chat.
Thank you for the great presentation. Is it possible to demonstrate a little bit about the SciVal performance indicators, if possible, how to find it?
Do you want to show something?
It should be available on one of our webinars from earlier this week have been loaded online.
Okay.
So it should be, I'll put the link, yeah, we'll put the link into the chat, but it would be covered within the SciVal.
Yes, please. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
And we should also we'll put the link in for the other recorded sessions in the email that sends out this recording to you as well. That's a good idea. So Nicole's just popping in the survey link into the chat. So please feel free to fill out the survey. Please let us know if there's any sessions that you want us to, if there's any other subject areas that you want us to cover. And if you have any follow-up questions or want to make an appointment with one of us, please feel free to contact your research liaison librarian, have a look at the library website and get in contact with one of us. Thanks everyone for attending, and we'll talk to you all later.
Thank you.